Welcome to English Creator YouTube channel. The likes of Siri and Alexa have started talking like us, but we don't know when and how human language began. The quest for the origin of language has exercised the mind and imagination of man from time immemorial. In the first part of this program, we discussed chief properties of human language. The second part dealt with the study of hominid fossils as evidence for the beginnings of human speech. In the third and the final part, we will focus on four theories of the origin of language as discussed by Frederick T. Wood in his book An Outline History of the English Language. It is believed that some type of spoken language developed between 100,000 and 50,000 years ago. Writing developed much later, around 5,000 years ago. But we simply don't know when, where, and how language originated. Even the 20th century study of human fossils and prehistoric artifacts has not solved the puzzle. There is no shortage of speculations about the origin of human speech. Several 19th century philologists, psychologists, and educationists devised theories to explain the origin of language. These theories are not based on any kind of scientific evidence. At best, we can treat them as well-meaning speculations. Most of the 19th century theories of the origin of language have fancy names. Perhaps their names suggest that they are not meant to be taken seriously. Bow wow and ding dong theories propose that human speech resulted, respectively, from the imitation of natural sounds and natural movements by our primitive ancestors. That would mean that the early humans lived in the forests or in intimate contact with nature. The Puh theory postulates that the first words developed from the instinctive emotional cries similar to those which we use as interjections. The gesture theory argues that language began with gestures of the hand, which were accompanied by corresponding movements of the tongue, the lips, and the jaw. Human speech began when vocal sounds took the place of gestures of the hand. The bow wow theory proposes that the primitive man heard the natural sounds around him: animal calls, bird songs, rushing water, and whistling wind. The sounds associated with particular things and animals became the basis for their names in the speech of the primitive man. The bow wow theory has its limitations. There are relatively very few onomatopoeic words in any language. On the other hand, there are a vast number of words that have no association with natural sounds. For example, family, weight, honesty, visible, etc. The bow wow theory cannot explain how such words originated. The ding dong theory of the origin of language is associated with the German scholar and philologist Max Muller. It says that the primitive man responded to the murmur of the stream or the swaying of the trees in the wind. Our earliest speech sounds were produced partly in imitation of and partly in harmony with these movements. The primitive man hummed or chanted to keep time while walking or working. And the earliest human speech originated from these hums and chants. Like the bow wow theory, the ding dong theory tells nothing substantial about the origin of language. Whenever we experience sudden emotions or feelings, we make a variety of sounds. You can read some examples of these sounds on the screen. The Pooh theory holds that the earliest human speech began as the primitive man's automatic interjection like vocal responses to certain emotions and feelings. The Pooh theory tells nothing substantial about the origin of language. It is difficult to believe that language could have originated from involuntary noises and cries. In our day to day speech, there is a very limited use of interjections to express emotional reactions. Moreover, we exhale breath when we produce spoken language, whereas emotional cries are produced with sudden intakes of breaths. Wilhelm Wundt, the German physiologist and philosopher, advanced the gesture theory of language origin. He believed that the earliest human communication began with signs and gestures of the hand. In course of time, as the movements of the tongue, the lips and the jaw began to accompany the gestures of the hand, the spoken language replaced the sign language. An instance is cited to support this argument. When we raise an arm upwards, the tip of the tongue also rises upwards towards the palate. Sir Percy Nunn, a British educationist, gives an example to explain the growth of speech from gestural communication. When we speak I or me, the lips are drawn towards ourselves in the same way that we might point to ourselves with a finger. Likewise, when we speak you or thou, the gestures point towards the person we address. However, the gesture theory of the origin of language cannot explain the vast jump the human language made from the gestural to the vocal communication. All of these theories of the origin of language have many limitations, but their greatest limitation is that they focus only on how the early humans began to produce single sounds and words, while not saying a word about how and when man began to produce meaningful speech. Language is a complex skill. Syntactic organization is essential for a meaningful speech. The theories of the origin of language do not explain how humans began to speak well formed sentences. Only God knows when and how language began. Even Google can't give a definite answer. If God and Google fail us, we will most likely know next to nothing about the origin of language. If we are asked the same question again, we have no choice but to make a non-verbal response like our primate cousins with a shrug and a sigh. Thank you.